Yo! Video games.
What's up, dudes? Matt here with another E3 2014 video. Now, I realize a lot of you have probably never been to E3, but if you ever do go to the show sometime in the future, I thought I'd let you know about the 5 biggest myths surrounding the E3 show and how they relate to the E3 of today. So let's just jump right into it. Number 5. E3 is a land of schwag and booth babes. This is a myth that was true at one time, but is no longer true. I started attending E3 in 2001, and back then there was certainly a lot of schwag and booth babes. What is schwag exactly? Well, that's freebies, giveaways. Early on, E3 had this sort of myth around it that if you got into the show, you'd be showered with free games and like free headsets and speakers and all kinds of crazy giveaway stuff, and that was really only true way back at the turn of the millennium. Nowadays, about the only thing you can really expect to get are some t-shirts, some lanyards, and some free Red Bulls or NOS energy drinks on the outside. E3 really just doesn't have that much swag that they give away anymore. The exceptions to this rule are Activision and Disney, who always give away Skylanders and Disney Infinity figures, and there's always humongous lines to get those things. I mean, there's people who go to that show simply just to get those figures. For me, I really couldn't care less, so I don't really even bother with those. As far as booth babes go, Nyko still has booth babes. There was some sort of PC free-to-play title that had some booth babes in it. The reality is, there just really isn't a whole lot of them. When E3 downsized for a couple years and came back, they did not take booth babes with them. So a lot of people say it's sexist and outdated, and that's kind of true, I guess, to a point. You know, I'm all for booth men or booth dudes as well as booth babes, but reality is I don't really care either way. I'm there to play games, I'm not there to oogle people. So it doesn't bother me that booth babes are gone. Again, there are some smaller booths that still do it. Xseed was hiring local cosplayers to be their booth babes, but by and large, you're not going to go to E3 and expect to meet a bunch of off-duty strippers who will like give you, nice photos any longer. It just doesn't happen anymore. If you ever do end up going to E3, don't expect to get a lot of free stuff and don't expect to see a lot of booth babes because they're just not there anymore. Number 4, this game is not playable yet. This is a lie that is told repeatedly to thousands of people every single year. For a general rule of thumb, if you see gameplay of a game title shown at E3 at a press conference or before or during the show, chances are very good that there is a playable build somewhere. But just because there is a playable build doesn't mean they're going to let anyone play it. Sometimes this is reserved for special parties only, super high-up members of the press, a Game Informer cover feature so no one else can have it. Whatever the reason is if a game is shown in playable form in some fashion, then that means there's a playable build somewhere. Hell, even last year, Hideo Kojima talked about inviting Tetsuya Nomura to come over to the Konami booth and play a build of the Phantom Pain that nobody but him and Nomura got to see or play last year. So, and a big reason for why this is because companies who only show games as a eyes-only demonstration, that it shows that these companies that do this are both paranoid and they want to have really strict control over how a game is perceived. If they have a playable version of a game but only they can play it, they can control exactly how a person plays the game, where they go, how the camera moves. They let you see only what they want you to see. They don't want anyone to see anything else. So, and it's a really shitty thing for those who do get to go, because if a game is eyes only or trailer format only, what is the point of anyone even going to the show for? We can all just sit at home and enjoy it like the rest of you. And believe me, if E3 was literally just videos and trailers, I wouldn't go, even if I could. Fuck it. There's no reason to go to a show if you can't play any of these games. It's not fun to drive to downtown LA. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be walking around on my feet for 12 hours a day just to watch trailers. Give me a fucking break here, you know? So when they say a game is not playable, but you see in-game footage of a title, that means it's playable somewhere. They're just not letting you or thousands of other people get a look at it. So that's a big myth. There's really nothing you can do about it if you're there. I've called developers out on it and publishers out on it many times, and it's always funny to see them like choke on their fucking words when you point it out to them. But what are you gonna do? Just know that when you see footage that's real in game, it's playable somewhere. Number 3, there is indeed a class system at E3. Yes, you just getting into the show is simply not enough. Depending on who you are, or more importantly, who you work for, will depend greatly on how you're treated and what you get to see and what you get to play. Now, there's a good 40 to 60,000 people that go to E3 every year. And you might wonder how some of these bigger sites somehow compete for time and space and get their hands on all these games. Well, let's be real here. There's a class system in E3. In fact, there's a class system even before E3. If you've ever heard of a thing called Judges Week, that's when they invite select members of the press to come and play the E3 demos a good week to two before the actual show, making the actual show floor a little pointless for some of the bigger outlets. But hey, they're still there anyways. And if you do by chance get to go, check out these first-party booths at Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. In Nintendo, you will notice that there is a main floor area where everyone is waiting in line to play their games. There is a VIP area. This year it was behind the Splatoon stage demo. And then there is a special backstage two-story area where only the super elite get to go inside and play. And there's basically 3 separate areas with the exact same demos at different parts of Nintendo's booth, only they make it harder and harder to get into these upper areas. A perfect example of how this class system works was while meeting at the media check-in for Nintendo, some of the ladies thought I was there for a booth tour, and they kept telling me, I'm sorry, our booth tours are all filled up, we don't have any space, blah blah blah. I wasn't there for that anyway, so it didn't really matter. It was just hard to convey that. But while they're telling me everything is booked up and sorry you had to reserve ahead of time, Pierre Schneider from IGN comes waltzing up to the desk and says, hey, I want to get a booth tour. I'm Pierre Schneider. I run IGN. And you know what they did? They gave him a booth tour in the VIP, or not even the VIP, the special backstage second floor area of Nintendo's booth. Who you are matters more. So if you do get to E3 and you do get shunned out of booth tours, or if you feel like, you know, you're just kind of being herded into like crowded areas, well, then there's a reason. There is a class system. If you work for a big company with big bucks, you're going to get the big treatment, which is really unfortunate because a lot of people who work at these paid journalism places, they don't know dick about most of the games they're covering. I really wanted to press the Xenoblade Chronicles interview because I really know Xenoblade, and even watching the Treehouse demonstrations, the people sitting there on the little director's chairs really knew dick about Xenoblade. Some kind of knew a little bit what they're talking about, but hell, there's a lot of people even within Nintendo who don't know a lot of the games they're demoing. So there is a class system at E3, and it's all about who you know, how much money your company pulls in, and that's going to guarantee you the most premium coverage. Number 2, this will be fixed by release. Here's a big myth that I don't think a lot of people realize. I have been going to E3 since 2001, I've said this before. Since that time, and now, in 2014, 95% of every single game I have played at E3 is entirely indicative of the game I get when it comes out on release. There is minimal to no changes 95% of the time between the E3 demo and the game I play on the show floors. The biggest exceptions in my mind that I can think of are Halo 1 on the Xbox, which was atrocious upon playing it at E3 2001, and Killer Instinct last year. And there's an interesting similarity there, and that is both were games that had extremely short development cycles, and the bulk of their development came after E3. So that was kind of a rare occurrence where a game really hadn't started full production until after the show, but they still had a playable demo, but hey, it worked out in the end. For the most part though, these are the same games you play when they come out. It was interesting being duped the first few years when I would go and I'd play a game for PS2 or GameCube or Xbox and go, oh, this game, you know, it's kind of neat, it's got some rough spots, but it'll be great when it releases. It'll be great, yeah, it'll be fixed. No, nothing's fixed. It's the same damn game when it comes out. The reality is, a lot of these E3 demos, they finish off a portion of the game, go to the show, and then after the show, they just finish the rest of the game. A lot of developers don't really like E3 demos because it forces them to sort of basically finish a chunk of the game entirely, and then they have to separate that out, which, you know, makes scheduling and kind of a nightmare, and then they have to go back and finish the rest of the game around it, and they don't usually go back to that E3 part that they already finished. So reality is, when people like to bitch at me, or they like to bitch at other people, or like, you shouldn't be so down on this, the game will be fixed by release, it's too early. Trust me, 95% of these games are the same when they come out. I can guarantee you most of everything you saw in a playable state at E3 will be the same game when it releases, with minimal to no changes. If there are changes, fantastic. And this all leads into the number 1 myth of E3. Games in development are immune to criticism. A big excuse as to why E3 is not a public show is that the games are in development and the public is not ready to see them because they'll get a bad impression of the game if they play an early state of it. Well, that's also led into another problem, and that is people go to E3, they play a game, it's not very good, but then they say, yeah, it was fun, it'll be cool when it releases, and no one has any idea of what's wrong with the game. I was told countless times by multiple people at multiple booths from multiple publishers. When I offered criticism on what I think needs to be changed or fixed, they thanked me. They thanked me multiple times. They were so glad someone was telling them what needed to be fixed rather than just going up, playing a game with issues and then just telling them it's great, it's fine, ship it. They want that. People at the show floor want to know what needs work. They don't want to sit there, give you something that's not done, then you go, oh, well, I can't criticize it because it's clearly in development, so I can't say anything bad about it, so I'll just say it was great, and then they think what they're doing is fine and ready to go, so they just go on to the rest of the game. No, you're supposed to offer criticism of these games. Now, don't be a huge dig about it. You can't say, hey, this game sucks my cock. You just gotta go and say, hey, you know what? Frame rate kind of sucks here. I wish it was a little better. Hey, you know what? The controls are a little sluggish here. Is there any way to like tune up the responsiveness of it? Tell them. A lot of the time, these people want to know. Again, they thanked me continuously for giving feedback. Good, honest, harsh feedback. That's what they want. If you're a professional, which you're supposed to be, E3 is for professionals only. If you're a professional and you're playing a game that isn't done yet, you should have the wherewithal to say, you know what? This is what needs work. This is what needs to change. You shouldn't just go there and then lick these people's assholes and then complain about when it comes out and it's not as good as what you expected it to be. You have to let them know. Developers are human. They're prone to error. They're prone to human faults. That's okay. That's okay to let them know when things need to be fixed. So this is probably my biggest peeve that I've noticed, that people don't want to accept any sort of criticism of any sort of game that's at E3. Yes, you're supposed to criticize these games. If these people don't hear it, nothing's going to get changed. Those are the top 5 biggest gaming myths of E3. Hope you're looking forward to some of the other content we got coming up later, and I'll catch you later on the channel. See you, dudes.